All right. Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. Please bear with me as I have frog voice. But thank you so much for joining us to talk about climate action in Gig Harbor. I have a little presentation I'm going to pull up. So can everyone see that okay? Just a little thumbs up would be great. Okay, great. So yeah, as I said, we're going to be talking about climate action in Gig Harbor. Thank you all for being here and bringing your expertise and taking time out of your very busy days. A few housekeeping items before we get started. If you are on a device that has a camera, please leave it on. This webinar and then the following meetings are going to be recorded and shared on our public website so that the public can participate. And it is also a webinar format so that the general public can listen in to these Zoom meetings. So please have your cameras on so we can all fully see, hear, and participate with you. I would like to designate rotating note takers for these meetings. Do I have a volunteer for today? I can also pick one. Nobody wants to volunteer.
I volunteer, Roxanne.
Thank you, Kylea, very much. So yeah, if you can just take notes and email that to me after the meeting, I'd really appreciate it. We'll have it up on our website as well. And then, excuse me, we won't have homework for this session, but for the subsequent sessions where we have subject matter experts coming to talk to us about specific topics, we are going to ask that you come up with 2 potential goals or action items, because we are working towards a comprehensive plan amendment to get climate change back into the Gig Harbor comprehensive plan. So if you come in with your ideas at the subsequent sessions, that will help me develop a thoughtful comprehensive plan amendment at the end of this. So let's just do a round of introductions. If we can, let me see, who do I got here? So we can just do a popcorn style, but I'd appreciate if you could introduce yourself, tell us your pronouns, what organization you represent, and briefly what motivates your participation in this group. So I can go first. My name is Roxanne Robles. I use she, her pronouns. I'm with the City of Gig Harbor as a senior planner. And my motivation to participate in this group is that we have a really lovely city council and administration that's interested in moving towards climate action in Gig Harbor. And I'm really excited to steward this process. So it is my job, but I am also very excited about these topics. So let's popcorn Roger.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Name is Roger Henderson. He, him. Currently a city council newly elected member. Motivation for this is I've been doing a lot of this stuff my whole life, and as I get older, you can tell I'm not a young whippersnapper anymore, but I see that there's more need to get something done, perhaps less for myself, but for future generations. So my job is to try to pull the city into the 21st century and starting to acknowledge climate change, and even more importantly than acknowledging it, starting to take some steps to combat it, as well as mitigate some of the effects that are going to be coming. Thanks.
And then Roger, if you can pick the next person, that'd be great. Thanks.
Let's see. Well, how about Jason Gaino? If I pronounced that right.
You did. Good morning. My name is Jason Gaino. I am the Government Affairs Director with the Olympia Master Builders. The reason I'm here today is my background is I did political campaigns as well as home construction So I'm really good at working with both sides. I love coming to the table and having a conversation. So that is what I really like doing, and that's one of the reasons I'm here today. I'm a firm believer is you can do affordable green housing is the thing that we can do. So happy to be here. I forgot to pick a name. Sorry, Cindy.
Good morning. I'm Cindy Andrews, planning staff for the city of Gig Harbor, pronounced she, her. And it was just a very interesting topic, and I'm just very excited as a planning tech to be involved. And even if I'm just in the background assisting, it's just a very good topic, and I'm just excited to be involved. So thank you. How about Brie Ellis?
Thanks, Cindy. Good morning. Brie Ellis from Stormwater Engineering Tech with the city. Pronouns are she, her. I have a personal interest in climate change, but my job also focuses on a lot of climate issues, stormwater, runoff, pollution. So hopefully we can create a good plan and then maybe incorporate some stormwater things within the climate change plan as well. So happy to be here. And how about Kylea?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you. I'm Kylea Wilson. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a sustainability coordinator at Pierce County in our Sustainable Resources Division of Planning and Public Works. And I'm here on behalf of our division, and we are working on implementing the Sustainability 2030 plan across the county. So I'm hoping that we can get some good alignment between what's happening at the county and what's happening among all the cities and towns in Pierce County on climate work and greenhouse gas reduction. And I'm excited to see how this process can help other cities and towns in the county incorporate climate into their comprehensive plans. And I will pass to Georgina. And Georgina, you're still muted.
So sorry about that. Georgina Armstrong, she, her pronouns, and I'm representing the Parks Commission. I'm really happy to be here. I'm very interested in climate change and have been for some time. I lived in California, so I experienced climate change, mostly through drought and wildfires. I also lived in Carmel, California, where I worked with the city officials and city staff when I wrote a report on the impacts of climate change on Carmel by the Sea's natural resources and public safety. And so I've been very interested in this issue for a long time. I'm so happy that the city is now going to include it in its comprehensive plan and have an action plan moving forward. Thank you. Let's see. I have to check my list here. Carl Simas.
Thanks, Georgina. And nice to meet all of you. I'm Carl Simas, principal planner here with the city of Gig Harbor. He, him pronouns. I've been interested in climate change and sustainability for a long time, going back to my college days, where I actually wrote my thesis on sustainable building, did a sort of a survey of LEED design, and at that time they were getting into neighborhood design, which I thought was pretty fascinating. So I'm really excited to see the city taking this on. I'm excited that we have a city council that is really behind this work and moving this forward. And I'm really glad to see that we've got such great participation. So I can't wait to see where this leads. Again, it's a pleasure meeting you all, and I'm excited to work with you. Let's see, I'll pass it over to Jason Jordan.
Can I cut in real quick? Jenny Wilk is trying to get on and she's having trouble. So Cindy, if you can maybe reach out to Jenny. She just texted me. Sorry for interrupting.
No, thank you. I've I've been trying to look for texts and emails, so I'll get out to her immediately. Thank you.
And
Yeah.
is Seth on? Seth Sordt sent an email saying he needs the link as well.
And I did reach out to Seth and I resent it. I don't see that he's logged on, so I will resend it a second time.
Okay,
So I'll
thanks.
reach out to both these people. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Jordan. I'm the Director of Environmental and Planning for the Port of Tacoma and the Northwest Seaport Alliance. I'm also a Gig Harbor resident, so kind of a double bonus for me. So I'm really excited about this. The ports of Seattle, Tacoma, and the Seaport Alliance have developed some really aggressive climate policies, emission reduction policies. We hope to get to zero emissions by 2050. We've developed a 5-year implementation plan to start that process. So we're really excited about it. I'm happy to kind of partner and share what some of the things that the port world is doing, but I'm also really interested in this from a residential perspective, being that I'm a Gig Harbor resident. So excited to be here. And I will pass this off to, how about John Ashlock?
Hope you guys can hear me. I apologize. I'm driving right now to an appointment up in Swim I had to get to. I currently sit on the design review board and also on Washington State's home inspector board. I really pretty excited about this because climate change, my generation before, we're going to have to be dealing with it for sure. I think that since Gig Harbor is a small town, we have a better chance to be able to implement some of the items prior to a big city. So I'm pretty excited on that. And also the fact on how it's going to potentially impact building, which will impact my career in many ways too. So I'm excited to be able to do it. As for passing the buck to another person here, I cannot look at the list.
Let's go to Crystal.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Crystal Cair. I use she and her pronouns. I'm a floodplain management planner with Pierce County and Surface Water Management Division. I'm very interested in climate change. Some of my work is going to involve working with coastal communities to address sea level rise and property owners who live on the coast. So in Gig Harbor, that's definitely an issue and a concern. In the past, I think, say 2007-ish, I served on City of Tacoma's Green Ribbon Climate Action Task Force when the city decided to tackle climate change and address this issue. So I have some experience with this kind of process. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you. Let's see. Get my list. How about Paul Rice? Have you gone?
I have not. I think I'm probably one of the last, but thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Paul Rice. I'm the building official and fire marshal with the city of Gig Harbor. And climate change is obviously affected by the built environment and the codes that the cities and states have established, energy codes, construction codes. So I'm really looking forward to being able to contribute and participate in the group, provide any insight that I may have. And I'm just really excited that the city's bringing climate change back into our comprehensive plan. And I just wanted to be a part of that. Let's see, did I see Jeff Langham signed in? Let him go
Yes,
next.
thank you. Had 3 meetings at 10 o'clock this morning, so getting through them. Yeah, Jeff Langham, Public Works Director for the City of Gig Harbor. I've been working with Pierce County, as some of you may know, on their own climate change initiative. But the City of Gig Harbor Public Works has been looking at impacts to infrastructure, utilities, roadways, parks, since before 2010. We're designing everything of our facilities that go in to be accommodating for king tide changes and other climate change impacts. So always wanting to hear how we can do better and what else might be on the horizon, and then share what we know. Thanks for inviting me.
Fantastic, thank you. It looks like we have one call in participant? Is that Jenny Wook or Seth Sordt? Okay. I'm not gonna worry about them right now. Thank you all for sharing.
Yeah, Roxanne,
Yes.
sorry. Seth sent an email, said he's on the call and he can hear,
Oh,
but he's
okay.
only an attendee and not a panelist, and he can't unmute.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully Cindy can address that. Seth is another council member. Oh, did
Good
you
morning.
get
Can
it?
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yay. I got through. Okay. Yeah. You must have sent me like a thing that now I can unmute myself. So thank you. It worked. Yeah. So my name's Seth Sordt. I'm on the Gig Harbor City Council. Really like hearing the introductions by everybody and why you want to be here. Lots of experience and passion. So I really love that. I wanted to get involved on this. In my regular day job, I oversee safety and sustainability for a shipping company. And so that includes stormwater and really environmental stewardship, whether it's, greenhouse emissions or installation of rain gardens. So looking forward to see what I can bring from my, outside experience in and how we can apply it to our city of Gig Harbor. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Okay. So we have Ryan Redmond as well. Ryan, do you want to unmute and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm Ryan Redmond. I'm the Chief Resources Officer here at Peninsula Light Company. We provide, as you know, electricity to the entire city of Gig Harbor, and we also have and the surrounding areas. Our electricity by and large is carbon free, and we also have a number of other items that we do to make sure that we stay on the kind of the renewable and green path. So I'm happy to bring my expertise to this in whatever way that I can.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we have a pretty big and diverse group here. And it looks like we also have Councilmember Wook. Jenny, do you want to chime in and tell us a little bit about why you're here?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So I'm here because I'm a city council person. I care about the environment. I care about the planet. I think there are things our city council can do, our city can do. Obviously, the first thing we need to do is get a acknowledgement that climate is a problem, get that in our comprehensive plan. I came to the council from doing work trying to save the Soundview Forest down on Harborview and Soundview. And I have been chair of the Gig Harbor Sustainability Coalition. We are the group that worked with the city to get the plastic bags ban going within the city of Gig Harbor and single-use plastic going, because we know what plastic does to the environment and we know what creating plastic does to the environment. So that's a big reason why I'm here. Happy to see everybody. Thanks.
Okay, maybe last one, Brittany Wickens. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, yeah, I am Brittany Wickens, PR manager at Peninsula Light Company. I joined at the very end of Ryan's introduction, so I trust that he gave us a good stance on and information from us. I'll primarily be attending as his backup when needed, and we were happy to be here and part of this group.
Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. With that, I think that's everyone that we have in attendance today. Thank you all for being here. We do have a couple folks that are still not here today. It's a big group to coordinate, but we're going to move on. So just a kind of very high level overview of this project. We are going to be, over the next few weeks, learning about topics around climate change that can be accessed, at the municipal level. And we're also going to be learning about state and regional issues, approaches, and requirements as far as climate change at the municipal level, since there is a potential for the state to require a climate change element within comprehensive plans in the future. We are going to be, as I mentioned, with kind of like the homework portion, for those of you that aren't here, we're not going to do it for this session, but in subsequent sessions when we're hearing from subject matter experts, I'm going to be asking that y'all do a little bit of homework and come back to the group with 2 goals or actions that kind of would apply to the comprehensive plan. So that I can kind of collate them and draft a thoughtful comprehensive plan amendment. We're going to review the draft of the comprehensive plan amendment at our August 23rd session. And then after that, send that amendment to the Planning Commission for adoption in September. So this is our timeline. Some of you may have seen this before, some of you may have not, but so today we're just doing a introduction to climate change and why it's important to address it. I wanted to make sure that we level set and have a shared vocabulary. I didn't want to assume anyone's kind of level of involvement or exposure to certain climate change topics. Next session on June 8th, we're going to be hearing from PSRC about regional approaches to climate change. We're going to be on the 22nd, we're going to be talking to folks working in sustainable building code and energy sources. We're going to talk about transportation and land use. And then our final session will be hearing from the Department of Commerce about state approaches to climate change. We'll be hearing from Pierce County about their sustainable waste program. And then I'll do a little bit on community engagement. And then, of course, our final session together will be reviewing the draft comp plan amendment. So I'm hoping to send that out a little bit ahead of that meeting so we can all have time to review it and give constructive feedback. Any questions about our schedule? And just keep a lookout for those Zoom links ahead of the meetings. We're doing this in a webinar format, as I mentioned before. So the links are going to be sent out ahead of the meetings. Oh, yeah, Jason.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, so I'm looking at this. Is the legislative process, I assume it will go to the Planning Commission for some recommendation, then on to City Council. Is that how that will work?
Yes.
And is the Planning Commission represented here? Is there, I guess what I'm worried about is if we do all this great work, is the Planning Commission, can they change it, or how does that process work, and how will they take our recommendations?
I don't have a ton of exposure to Planning Commission, but maybe Carl can speak to that.
Well, I think there was 2 parts to your question, Jason. The first part is, is the Planning Commission represented on this committee? They are, and in fact, Robert Soltis just joined us. I see that he just logged on. We had some, really sorry about all the link mishap. I'm working on that on the back end to get that straightened out, and we'll address that in housekeeping at the end of the meeting. But in answer to your second question, then, so we would come up with this with a recommendation for policies and goals to update our comprehensive plan through this process. And then we have to take that through our legislative process for a recommendation from Planning Commission to Council. Now, yes, of course, the Planning Commission could make some changes. The Planning Commission would also be required to hold a public hearing. And so at that point, we would hear from the public. And so there could be some changes to those recommendations before they get up to Council. But of course, there would be a consistent record kept from this committee through the Planning Commission and then on to City Council. And of course, we also have City Council members represented here on this committee too. So I think that there's a good, it's a good linear process in that regard. We'll have a solid record with members from this committee sort of following it all the way through. And I wouldn't foresee that we would have, major changes to those recommendations by the time they get back to City Council. Does that answer your question, Jason?
It does. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions about the timeline? Okay, great. So we're working on this comprehensive plan amendment. I just wanted to throw it out there that, you know, this comprehensive plan amendment kind of opens the door for us to have some potential future projects such as a climate action plan. We could either adopt our own comprehensive plan element around climate action, or it may end up being a state requirement. We could keep a climate change body, you know, ongoing as part of our, you know, rainbow of commissions and committees. And then whatever other kinds of climate change projects or implementation that come out of this are all, you know, potential future projects. Yeah, Roger, you had a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. I may have asked it before at earlier meetings or city council, or maybe even a study session, but I understand the need for comprehensive plan elements. That's critical, and that looks like it might be in September. Am I understanding it right that we need something in the comprehensive plan about climate change before we could even do a climate action plan?
Yes, that's why these are potential future projects. So right now we're focused on the comprehensive plan amendment, so we get climate change into the comp plan, because it doesn't exist there right now. So that is really our first step.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. All right. Any questions about future projects? Great. Okay. I know we haven't been together that long, but I wanted to give y'all the opportunity to take a 5-minute break. So please come back to us at 10:35. And then we will get into our climate change terms and glossary. All righty, everybody, welcome back. So when you're back online, please just turn your camera back on, as we are going to be having this as a public recording and meeting. And
Roxanne, hi, this is Robert Soltis. I'm sorry I was a little bit late here. I got kind of tied up with numbers, but
that's okay.
there's a couple of things I wanted to talk to. Carl mentioned a couple of things about the planning commission at the very end, and I think I got the gist of it, but I wanted to elaborate just one thing on that if I could. Carl, I presume that the Climate Advisory Board would update the commission regularly with information, so perhaps it wouldn't be a total surprise when the big update got dumped on our desk.
Yeah, Bob, I think that is a good point. And I think that's, another good reason to have a planning commissioner on this panel, so that we could have, maybe that could be the report back to the planning commission, because the planning commission is meeting regularly at this point. We're very busy. So we could make that a standing item on the agenda at planning commission, if you're comfortable with that.
Oh yeah, that'd be easy to brief up what's going on in a few minutes at the end of the other work.
Perfect.
Also, Roxanne, were you planning on updating the community over time on this process, or only at the very end?
Yes, we will have a public webpage where the meetings, the materials will be available.
Roxanne, this is Georgina.
Yeah.
I have one question. Where would the public safety component come in on this list of our meetings?
What do you mean by public safety?
Well, in the event of a wildfire, for instance, evacuation of public, just public safety in general.
So you mean like emergency management?
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't budgeted for that, but we can certainly, I can try and make that work. I imagine that would also be something that our state or regional presenters would have a lot to say about.
That would be great if they could do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Georgina. Okay, so Barbara, you had a question?
First, I thought I'd introduce myself. I'm Barbara Ann Smolko. I'm with Pierce County Surface Water Management. I work with the Key Peninsula Gig Harbor Islands Watershed Council and the South Sound Clean Water Partner. So yeah, my other question is, I was wondering if you could send me a copy of the slideshow so I can catch up a little bit.
Yeah, they'll be available on the public webpage. I'll send out a link. So it will also act as like a portal for all of you. So I was going to have Barbara and Smolko and Robert Soltas introduce themselves, but they've already kind of taken that on. Barbara, since you're unmuted, would you mind telling us a little bit about what motivates your participation in this group? And then I'll have Commissioner.
Well, we have a couple of things.
Okay. Answer that question. I'm sorry.
There are a couple things about it. The KGI Watershed Council is particularly interested in climate change. We tend to collect a lot of information about what's going on in the watershed, and that includes water quality, a bunch of other measures. And so we're trying to track trends to see if we're starting to see some, results from climate change. And we think we are. The other part of it is the group is one of the goals of the group is to come up with pretty tangible suggestions for actions that could be taken locally to address climate change. So that's on the to-do list for that particular group. The other thing is that I work for Pierce County in the surface water management, and we are doing flood planning. And one of the elements of flood planning that we've included this time is climate change and how to plan for that as it relates to flooding.
Wonderful, thank you. So Commissioner Soltis, would you mind introducing yourself to the group and then also a little, just briefly, what motivates your participation?
Sure. Robert Soltis. I've been a planning commissioner for the city of Gig Harbor for the last 3 years or so. And I've learned so much, Carl. Thank you so much. We haven't dealt much with environmental issues, but we have a major shoreline master plan that we spent a lot of time on. So I'm somewhat familiar with that. I have a lifelong interest in renewable energy and clean energy issues. I've got a master's degree in environmental science and planning. And it's been sort of a lifelong passion for me. So I'm very happy that the City of Gig Harbor is taking these steps at last, and willing to throw myself in here full speed to get this done quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right. Now that we're all back online, I wanted to talk about and kind of level set with some climate change concepts and terms. I know that many of you may already be familiar with these things, but I didn't want to make any assumptions about who knows what, when, and where, So this is not an exhaustive list, but these are some definitions and terms that may get thrown around throughout the subsequent subject matter presentations. So anthropogenic is usually used to describe climate change, which is a process or result generated by humans. So within the context of our discussions here, we're going to consider that climate change is anthropogenic and human caused. There are fluctuations in climate that happen naturally, but the climate emergency that we're dealing with at this moment is anthropogenic. Climate adaptation, you'll often hear adaptation interchanged with resilience, but it means some kind of adjustment of natural human systems to this changing environment to mitigate the harm that has come from anthropogenic climate change. And then climate change itself is significant changes in global temperature, precipitation, wind patterns that occur over several decades or longer. So again, as I said, climate does have natural fluctuations, but the rate at which temperatures have increased over the last few decades due to anthropogenic processes has created a climate emergency that has significantly changed our global environment. Environmental justice is, yeah, Jason?
Sorry, I can wait. I kind of, would you rather me wait till you get through this?
Is it a question about the terms?
No, it's a question about city policy. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, would you mind?
Yeah.
We waited, thank you. Okay, so environmental justice is another term that you might hear. This applies to the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to development and environmental laws, regulations, and policies. So the rapid pace of urban development in the last half of the 20th century tended to concentrate industrial and transportation projects in communities of color, underrepresented communities, and poor communities. And this has led to environmental injustice. And so a critical component of climate change action is to make sure that we are being reparative and restorative with regard to how these projects are carried out. Greenhouse gases are water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, hydrofluorocarbons, perfluorocarbons, sulfur hexafluoride. These are naturally occurring, but they have seen increased presence in our atmosphere because of anthropogenic processes. And these gases trap heat from the sun, creating this so-called greenhouse effect. And that has caused a increase in global temperatures. Heat island is another common term that we talk about within development, climate change, and urbanization. So impervious surfaces such as parking lots, sidewalks, unnatural turf fields, things like that, can trap heat and don't allow water to permeate. And so they absorb more solar energy. And so you'll usually find that surface temperatures in urbanized areas are much higher than those where there isn't as much pavement. Mitigation, we kind of talked about this with adaptation and resilience, but it's a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And then here's resilience again. It's kind of like looking forward, how do we prepare for these inevitable changes? I realized that I just spoke really quickly. Are there any questions so far about any of these terms? Okay, great. Okay, so the cumulative effects of climate change are that we have ecosystem changes, we have less snow, we have earlier snow melt, we have heavier rains, stream flow disruptions. I mean, I'm sure we're all familiar with the more common occurrence of wildfires and smoke in the Northwest and, well, the American West in general. And then of course, sea level rise. So all of these are related to anthropogenic climate change and the increased presence of greenhouse gases in our environment. So Jason, I'll go over kind of this process and then maybe it would be a good time for your question. Okay, great. So we have climate change. It's like a big issue. It is literally a climate emergency. We are going to be tackling what we can from a municipal level. So we are going to be, getting input from external stakeholders and the public within the context of these meetings, and then also the Planning Commission hearings. We will be generating a comprehensive plan. So this is kind of our role right here within this gold circle. And then going forward, we will be able to translate that into policies and plans. We will have to implement those policies and plans, monitor them, evaluate how it's going, and then, likely adjust and continue kind of that ongoing process. So while what we're doing right now is looking at the comprehensive plan amendment, we want to make sure that we do so thoughtfully and meaningfully because it will have an effect on, our processes going forward. So Jason, do you want to ask your question now?
Yeah, I was just curious, has the city council adopted a resolution or done a proclamation around climate change or anything like that that kicked off this process? Just to state that, it's important and we need to do this. Is that something that already happened or is it going to happen? Or I'm just thinking like our port commission started the process with a resolution saying, why it was important and then directed staff to develop a plan.
Sure. Councilmember Henderson, did you want to address that?
Yeah, I could actually had a question about this, but being on the city council at our January 29th council retreat, the city council jointly set up a series of priorities for us. And so to answer your question, we did not go the route of a resolution, but we put it as a priority, which then could help direct staff and advise staff on starting this whole process. So yes, we didn't start a resolution, but we put it as a priority, pretty big priority as well. And that's gotten us here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So Roxy, my question is the policy and plans, that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where things get done.
Yes.
I understand we have to have stuff in the comp plan. We've got to have at least some sort of a climate change element in the comp plan. Will there be a possibility of concurrently setting up, getting ready policy and plans while we're getting this into the comp plan? Or is this a very linear thing that we've got to get it into comp plan before anybody can even start drafting, not enacting, but drafting any different policy? I'm just trying to for me, this is an emergency. And so I want that arrow that's in the middle. I don't want that to be 6 months, 8 months, or a year, or 2 years. I want that to be like, yeah, we're kind of doing this at the same time. So I think if you get my drift, that's what I would sure like to see.
I appreciate your energy and yeah, you understand the urgency here, Councilmember Henderson. As from an, kind of a legislative administrative perspective, it wouldn't be good to draft any kind of policy or plans before we have goals and policies in place to address climate change in the comprehensive plan. So, we don't know what your goals or actions in the comprehensive plan are going to be as of yet. So drafting a plan ahead of that would be putting the cart before the horse in a big way. So I really appreciate your tenacity to this, but just hold off. We are going to get there, I promise.
Thank you very much.
Barbara Ann?
I need to step away for a bit, but I wanted to mention that the monitoring and evaluation part is something that we've been really invested in, trying to come up with ways of measuring environmental health in this area. And so it could be that that might be part of figuring out the cart before the horse, or whatever part of it is figuring out what measures we're going to use that will be helpful in that. So I'm hoping that we can bring that to the table, is to help figure out what we're going to use to measure improvements or not. So anyway, thank you. I'll be back in a bit.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions about this process?
I have one, Roxanne, if I may.
Sure.
The external stakeholders, who were you thinking about in that bubble?
They're all here. We have people from Pierce County. We have the KGI Watershed Council represented. We have Port of Tacoma. We have Peninsula Light. Who else do we have represented? You came in after we did a lot of our introductions, but we have a very wide variety of external stakeholders represented here. And not everybody is here either. So we have about 20 folks on this advisory body, and most of them are from outside the city.
Do you have the school districts on our group?
No, not at this time. We wanted to cap this group at 20. And so I think we have a lot of really great expertise in this group. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yep.
Great. Any other questions before we move on? Carl, did you have a comment?
Well, I guess I was going to follow up a little bit on Councilmember Henderson's question about whether or not we can be sort of developing the policy, or we are developing policy, as part of the comp plan amendments. But as far as the any kind of climate action plan, I think a lot of what we'll be doing, and also speaking to Barbara, following up on Barbara Ann's point as well, I think some of what will go into the plan will be informed by what this committee talks about, and what the results of what the results are from this committee. So I think we are in essence kind of starting the plan in that way, and I think it's also important. Barbara Ann's point is important about talking about measures and how we should be thinking about long term how we're going to meet those goals, and how do we measure it along the way. So I guess the long story short, what I'm trying to say is I think a lot of it we will be working on that plan in essence as part of this. We just won't be putting necessarily pen to paper as far as the plan goes. Does that help? Councilmember Henderson?
Thanks. Yeah, it does. I guess what I was trying to get at partly was there are some things in city code that could be changed now without having to have a comp plan amendment. What I'm trying to get to is low-hanging fruit, stuff that the city could do quickly while we're developing the comprehensive plan. For instance, I think somewhere in our city code, we have a recommendation for purchasing hybrid vehicles, if possible. There's a lot of if possibles or when yada yada. Something like that probably would be very supportive of a comp plan or a policy or a plan. And that seems like that could be changed somewhat quickly versus waiting for a comp plan amendment. I'm just trying to get at the little things that we could do up front. But I understand that, you know, a lot of this has to go into a comp plan first before we can have broad scope things. And that's necessary, and we'll work on it smartly. I was just looking at some of the quick things. And I know all of you guys at the city will be thinking when we're going through this process, oh yeah, let's change this when we get the comp plan amendment. So it's not like you're going to get all this done and then say, okay, now we got to figure out how we're going to execute it. I think there will be some overlap in there.
I just wanted to jump in on that. This is Georgina, and on the urgency of it. So I think that if you prioritize the urgency, there might be some things we could identify that we could start working on more quickly, that you don't want dragged down by a longer process. One is definitely emergency alert systems, for instance, for the public, and how we can evacuate if suddenly there is a wildfire. To me, that is not something we are able to wait too long on if we're going to do due diligence and be responsible for the safety of the public. So I just wanted to bring that up.
And Georgina, that's a great point. The emergency management issue is an interesting one. And the city does have an emergency management plan that's actually, that we actually work on and coincide with Pierce County to keep updated. We just went through an update of that not long ago. I'd have to go through that plan and see how it addresses evacuation routes and any kind of firewise safety. Paul, maybe I know you've worked on that plan in the past. It's managed now by our chief of police, but that might be changing soon too, I think. So, but I just wanted to note that we do have some policies in place for that kind of thing, and we could review those policies as a little bit as part of this process too.
Yeah, I think my point is more about getting the information to the public. Like, it's great to have the policy, but how are we going to get the vital information into the hands of the public? And understanding evacuation routes it would be a good start for that, for the public to understand those evacuation routes. I know we did that in Carmel, and it's getting the two connected, the city policy connected to the everyday person who's living in their home.
Thank you, Georgina. Thank you, Carl. Any other comments about this process? Okay, great. So this portion of the meeting is going to be kind of the meat of our discussion here. I've listed out all of our comprehensive plan elements, and these are the topics that we're going to be amending and thinking about as we move through this process. So I wanted to just kind of put out there what is, and have you all respond, what is important for your role or organization when it comes to climate change, because we want to be able to think critically about what is going to be changing over the long term and what does Gig Harbor need to address. So if you could please just raise your hand, I can unmute you, and hopefully this can generate some healthy discussion. And Kylea, I'm really going to be leaning on you to take some good notes here. So thank you so much for volunteering. So does anybody want to go first? All right, Councilmember Wook.
Yes, thank you. So obviously, I think one of the ones is land use, how our land is being used and how we're saving it and what we're doing with it and how we're conserving it. And the environment, I think, is also another one. And also, I'm just going to throw in housing because I think there are some changes that we could make to our housing element. Because as we know, 40% of pollution comes from houses and comes from buildings, actually more than houses. But I think there are things we could do in housing. And one of those perhaps could be to make sure that there is a hookup, electrical hookup for EV being able to charge in homes and houses. So those are some of my things. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Jeff Langham.
Thank you, Roxy. Yeah, I think that for Public Works, we would be looking at quite a few of the items listed here. We, like I said in my intro, we already try to account for changes in climate that might affect the harbor, essential public facilities, which includes utilities, transportation, and when we build capital projects. We don't have anything official, though, that we point to. We just look at best available science and say that we're going to use the reasonable test and say that this is worth the effort. And generally, we've had support, though not always. We've not always had support, depending on the council that's here, to respond and build capital projects that will accommodate climate change. And so I think that we can put quite a few of these into the comp plan amendment and would be important for Public Works.
Wonderful, thank you. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Roxy. I've got a few on here that I think are important to me. One, I'd start with transportation. A lot of greenhouse gases are emitted from vehicle trips. The more vehicle trips we can reduce and get people out walking and cycling is a benefit to everybody. Another area that I'm finding very important these days is environment/open space, our preservation of our urban forest. I know that we're going to be working on an urban forest management plan. Hopefully that'll be added to either the comp plan or maybe just something that we can add soon. But again, the protection of our urban forest canopy is pretty critical for me as well. Utilities and housing probably be the third area that anything the city can do to step up and start using solar versus natural gas to power our buildings or to heat our buildings is always good. That ties into utilities. I know we're gonna probably have some discussions with like Councilmember Wook was saying, EV charging stations that will need support from our local energy supplier on that. So those are the big things that I'm thinking of: the transportation, housing, utilities, and environment, as in trees.
Thank you. Georgina?
Yeah, I guess I should address parks, recreation, and open space. Thinking ahead for the drought and heat waves that will be coming, drought tolerant plants and the water use, looking at how we're watering our parks to ensure we're not wasting water, providing more shade for the public. And also on the open space, since much of it is woodland, obviously that can be addressed a lot with the plan for managing the forest, but also that we look to the wildfire mitigation in our open space. That would come under that urban forest management plan, I'm sure, but I think that's going to be vital.
Thank you.
I'll go if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I'm just kind of piggybacking on a lot what was said, Jeff in particular. I think the capital facility planning, we're starting to see it in some of the bigger cities where they're changing the elevation of roads in anticipation of sea level rise, depending on where those roads are and the infrastructure that's obviously within those roadways. I think is going to be really, really key. Transportation, a lot of folks in Gig Harbor live in Gig Harbor, but work elsewhere. And so getting in and out of the harbor is going to be really, really key, I think, and important. And then shoreline management, with sea level rise and the hardening of some of the armoring that we've seen around the harbor, and is that the right approach? It kind of ties into the environment as well. Is that the best approach? Most ecologically appropriate approach, because I'm guessing shoreline residents in Gig Harbor are going to want to continue to build their rock bulkheads and things like that. And I think the city should take that under consideration too.
Thank you. Crystal.
Yeah, thank you. It's a big topic, so I'll just take it from what's important for my role, thinking about it that way. I think land use is a big one, because it's talking about where things are built and how they're built, and in coastal areas and shorelines, and in floodplains along rivers and creeks. Those are going to be all exacerbated with more flooding from climate change. So what and how, what's allowed in those areas and how things are built is really important. I think the environment element is obviously also important, and shoreline management as well. And also want to throw in under there, whether it falls under transportation or environment, is culverts. So culverts can be, built under roads and driveways and things like that. And they can also block fish passage. So there's a fish issue and a tribal treaty rights issue there. There's also the issue of, again, more flooding and culverts not being built to capacity to be able to handle the increased flows. So that's another topic that is important.
Thank you.
Hi, Roxy. This is Seth. Can you hear me? I don't know how to raise my hand from the phone.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Sordt. I just wanted to add a couple of thoughts on here, and I think it was maybe established in the beginning, but just want to be sure we have such a large group. I want to, of course, be sure everyone is heard, and of course we have some limited time with, of course, 20 people on the call. So, well, I think it's great to voice these things now. I think it might be appropriate to even do a survey where, I think just getting a little bit more collective from the entire group, where some might just agree but not speaking up. That's just a thought there. And then additionally, I'm a new council member. Only been in this seat like Roger for almost 5 months. But one of the things that I was brought up to in conversation around this group starting, there was some concern around having 3 council members on there. I hope that no one feels like intimidated or just being steered by city council. And so just want to make sure everybody feels, we're all on equal ground, and just want to hear thoughts from everybody. So I really have enjoyed hearing this stuff so far. I think there's a lot of great ideas out there. Love Roger's questions on the process. That is definitely something that, we have all these great ideas, but how do we implement them and roll them out at the right time, and what's most feasible and also reasonable. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I would also offer, if y'all have trouble thinking about this question in particular, we would also be interested in hearing, like, what have you heard from the public or your customers around climate change? Because I think that also relates to, how does your organization engage with this topic? So if you wanted to offer any any comments of that nature, I think we'd be interested in hearing. Yeah, Kylea.
I'm happy to share next, and maybe I'll get a little bit at what I've heard from some community members, but I'll start with sort of what we've gathered from the county's perspective on greenhouse gas emissions, because we are going through a new inventory process for 2019 data right now. So we don't have final data available yet. We'll share that probably in June or July when it's ready. But kind of echoing what's been said already about land use and the importance of maintaining tree canopy. One of the most, I don't know about shocking, but like one of the most eye-opening bits of information we've gotten in the new inventory is just how important land use is to our greenhouse gas emissions. And this is really a significant chunk of where we're seeing countywide emissions come from, is just basically the conversion of undeveloped land into developed land and that loss of tree cover. So that is something that I think will take hopefully more of a forefront in the county's sustainability planning. And yeah, just something that I'm already hearing there's a lot of interest in. So definitely that land use element is important. And I think it's also very connected to community design and transportation. We just think about the way we develop our communities and where that development is going, where we are adding housing and transportation options, and designing communities so people can walk and bike around and get to their jobs, get to all their necessities, grocery store without having to get in their car, or can they get around by public transit? So these are things I've also heard a lot from the community, that folks are really interested in what's going to happen in their neighborhood and how their neighborhoods are going to be improved by our work in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I think there's also a good intersection with economic development as we think about all the new jobs that are going to need to come with changes to our energy system and our transportation system and our housing systems, our buildings. There's a lot of potential for new job training programs in things like HVAC replacement or heat pump installation, solar panel installation. So how are we making sure that those jobs are available locally to our residents, and that we're creating good job pathways for folks to develop those skills and apply them here and really help us build these new communities that we need to see for a sustainable future. So I think those are all kind of intertwined elements that are really critical here for climate change. And then I think a lot of the other ones that were raised are important too, like our work with utilities, the shoreline, and that adaptation and resiliency element of preparing for those impacts of sea level rise and flooding in our parks and our open spaces and along the shoreline. So I just wanted to highlight those. And I definitely, from my experience working with community members, folks are concerned about these kind of impacts that are coming, things like flooding, but they really want to know about how it's going to affect their daily lives. So how is it going to affect your home, your commute, the way we interact every day in our built environment?
Thank you, Kylea. Those are definitely like big concerns, I think, for a lot of different communities. And yeah, we cannot ignore that transportation and land use are very inextricably linked. Jason.
Thank you. My organization itself, I mean, out of the 12 issues on this list, I think we would care about all 12 of them. And I think a lot of I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I mean, these issues are all really intertwined with a lot of other organizations. I mean, what I like best about this is, I work with a lot of other cities, and, before this, I worked with other counties. So, I mean, you can look at other examples from other counties, like Federal Way has a great tree canopy plan where you can have development of new land and still have amazing tree coverage that looks beautiful and, is still green. So, I mean, I'm just very excited to you can bring in other things from other cities that they've done well to the city of Gig Harbor.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I would welcome any of you forwarding, any plans or kind of even just like one-off policies that you've seen from other organizations or your organization that you think are working well. Because it's one thing to write something, it's another to kind of see it in practice. So if you've seen something that has been implemented successfully, we would love to hear about it. I had a thought based on these. Yeah, so we've had a lot of comments about, the kind of interconnectedness of a lot of these topics. Have any of you had any experience or seen any ways of working that create a collaborative and forward-thinking way to kind of communicate these across maybe departments or across disciplines? Jeff?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if Ryan might jump in and also add to this, but Penn Light and City of Gig Harbor are just now starting to talk about how we can make sure that there is that we're getting EV charging stations spread out throughout the city, and making sure that our plans will fall in line with what they, Peninsula Light, have available to us. So Ryan and I have exchanged a few emails, and we're meeting with their Michael Prentice, who's leading that charge, and we'll be talking about that, and hopefully having a part of that will be a good plan to establish for the next few years how and when we can start setting out the charging stations.
Wonderful. How did that partnership come about? Was it just kind of I mean, obviously you two are working on it, but I'm curious how it's going.
Well, I mean, we put in each EV charging stations, I want to say 5 years ago, 6 years ago at the city. Council that came in after that put a stop to that and said we didn't need to do that. And then now that we seem to be able to get the support from the council we have in place now, I just reached out to Ryan and said, it's about time we make this happen, because I know that what we're going to be doing will impact your operation. And so let's start talking about that. So he immediately responded and said, yeah, excellent. They've been thinking about that themselves, and we're going to do it.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Councilmember Wook?
Yes, thank you. So obviously, because we are neighbors with Pierce County, I'm really happy, and I hope that Carl will talk a little bit more about the conversations that he has monthly, I believe, with Pierce County Planning, and how important that is. You know, we saw on 38th and Hunt Street when those trees were destroyed and taken down. That's in the county, but it was a shock to all of our citizens, and it would be nice. And I think Carl's working on this. Katrina's been involved in this, is trying to find out a little bit ahead of time what's coming from the county. And if we can, in fact, work with the county, maybe and maybe understand what SEPA is doing with building rules and regulations from the county as it affects across the street from us, because we have that in lots of places. One side is Gig Harbor and the other side is the county. And overdevelopment in the county affects overdevelopment in the city, and affects what houses and what development does happen in the county. They end up driving on our roads. So I am really happy that the city of Gig Harbor is working with Pierce County, and I hope we work more with them. I think that's a good idea. Thanks.
Thank you, council member. Since we've heard from a couple people that have their hands raised, I'd like to, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Brie or Paul, but I would love to hear from you how you see this comp plan kind of relating to your work, Brie, especially with the stormwater plan. If there's anything that you would like this group to be thinking forward about, or if there's anything that's on your mind. And Paul, same question for you.
Sure, I'll go first. Obviously, housing and community design affects my daily work. I've been working in the construction and building and energy codes for at a state level and local level for about the last 20 years. And a lot of times, some of the fixes, we've even mentioned a few of them today, EV charging stations, solar, adding, as Jenny mentioned, adding the infrastructure for electric vehicles and homes definitely affects my daily work. And having a part of that, having a voice and a way to help shape how our city adopts those provisions is really important to me. It's also something that I look forward to. I actually have been working on it, obviously, over the years with the state, with WABO and some of the other stakeholders. master builders had a tremendous amount of input into our local codes, mechanical systems, energy provisions, and this stuff affects my daily job every day. So yeah, I'm excited to be able to work on some of these issues for our city.
Are there any cities that have a, I know that there's the International Building Code that kind of sets safety standards, but have you seen any local jurisdictions that have implemented something that you're like, oh my gosh, that would work so well in Gig Harbor. I wish we had this in place.
A number of them have had, the state has a state energy code, and it addresses a lot of issues related to consumption, greenhouse gas emissions, volatile chemicals, all those type of things. And at the local level, cities and counties are able to adopt amendments to the state code. And I have seen quite a few of them adopt. Pierce County has a provision that all new homes have to be provided with the infrastructure for electrical vehicles in all their garages and all new homes. It costs about, say $300 to add the infrastructure now in a new home versus after the fact, say $3,000. So it wasn't too tough of a sell to be able to get those provisions in the county code. There's provisions throughout our nation. California requires solar panels in all new housing. So yeah, there's quite a few provisions that have been put into local and regional codes that are very positive. So
thank you, Paul. Brie, I want to make sure we hear from you.
Sure, thanks. So right now I'm working on a stormwater management action plan, and that touches on a lot of different comprehensive plan elements. For example, capital facilities. Do we want to do retrofits on our existing stormwater infrastructure? Stormwater is the =1 water pollutant in urban areas. So I think that ties directly with climate change. How can we reduce hard surface? Less hard surface would benefit as far as flooding possible. Tree retention, we talked about that. How can we include tree retention within our stormwater plan? Less hard surface again. And then there's an aspect to our stormwater permit on source control. So source control on existing development, reducing pollutants. How do we educate local businesses? And then how do we educate local residents? We talked about, green space as far as open space, parks. It was touched on how are we managing those spaces, fertilizers, extra maintenance. How do we get away from this green lawn idea, which is just water waste, pollution generation, etc. So I feel like I touch on a lot of these elements. Stormwater is kind of in all of it. So I don't know. I have lots of ideas. Really happy to be here. And it kind of all ties into our stormwater management plan as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brie. So we have a couple people with their hands up. We'll go Jason, Crystal, Georgina, and Carl.
Just assuming, Jason, me, that's Jason?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. I was just going to piggyback on a lot of what's said and remind this group, if you're, or I guess city staff, if they're not already tracking, there's a tremendous amount of grants out there right now. And I know the port's all in on the grants, but there's grants from community engagement, support all the way to major infrastructure investment. If you make it green infrastructure, especially at the federal level right now, there's just a whole lot of grant opportunities. And so I feel like the city of Gig Harbor is a little bit behind the curve in that regard, but there's still time to catch up. And as you're looking, and it sounds like Jeff's already doing this, but as you're looking at major, capital facilities redevelopments, there's lots of grants out there for that.
We'd love to hear about them if you want to forward those along.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Thank you, Jason. Crystal.
Thank you. I was thinking about the earlier
some earlier comments that people had made about how to engage the community members and the public in this. And thinking back to my work with the city of Tacoma, it was a long time ago, so I don't remember, but I think we spent about 9 months as a committee working together to come up with a suite of recommendations. And amongst them addressed how to carry this work forward and how to make sure it just doesn't get dropped or become a plan sitting on a shelf, which that recommendation was to create the Sustainability Commission and as well as a staff position at the city of Tacoma. And that was accepted and adopted. And so if any of you are familiar with Tacoma, they do have a Tacoma Sustainability Commission that has citizens and volunteers serving on it, and they're working on implementing the plan and tracking it and monitoring it and making sure that it moves forward. And I think that was a really good idea and successful. They wouldn't have been as successful as they have been this far and for this long without having that continued engagement with the public. And so that would be something that I could see, like maybe this group potentially, recommending in the future, if that makes sense.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, that's definitely on the radar as a potential future project. Georgina.
Yes, I kind of am following along on what Crystal said. When I lived in California, I knew the climate action manager of Santa Cruz, and they keep all the climate action policies at the forefront of everything they do. So everything that comes, for instance, before the council from staff that have recommendations for maybe a specific project, that the climate action plan must be referenced in there. Everything they do, everything they work on, it drives the conversation always. And so I think so that we don't lose sight of all this work that we're going to be doing here and also that will be done in the future on developing a plan, I think we have to build into that as we go along. And how will we use this? How will we implement it on a daily basis so that we take advantage of every opportunity we have to make sure that climate is always part of the conversation, both adaptation and mitigation.
Certainly, thank you.
Am I next, Roxy? I assume I am. I wanted to ask, so we were talking about, Paul, you'd brought up, and I wonder what Jason Gaino's thoughts are on this too. I know we recently adopted the new energy code that was put out by the state or adopted by the state, and I wonder two things. One, have we been hearing, and maybe this is more for Jason, have we been hearing anything from the community out there at large about those energy codes, and how that, what sort of impact that's had across the board, if any? And then secondarily, if there are any other potential code changes like that are coming down the pike. And I bring this up because I think, in this conversation, we have to think about barriers as well, right? To getting to whatever our ultimate goal is here. And one of those barriers is the economics of some of these policies and things that need to be put in place. And I'm not trying to say that, that we want to support them, but I think that we need to acknowledge those barriers as well and keep them in the back of our minds when we're having these discussions. So I don't know if Jason or Paul, if you guys have any thoughts on that or not, and if not, no big deal. I just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that if you don't mind. Yeah, like you guys adopted the energy code, which you have to do because the Building Code Council requires it. It's going to add about $15,000 to $20,000 onto the cost of all new home construction. And what they're trying to do is make it, climate change, you want to have it all. It's all about equity. So we want to have climate. You want to have affordable, low power bills for everybody, no matter if you're at the high end of the economic spectrum or low end of the economic spectrum. Just the problem is all the high energy, high efficiency stuff is super, super expensive, and that cost has not come down yet. So the only people that are really installing that stuff are people that can afford it, and no one at the low end of that spectrum is getting anything provided to them, and it won't be for a number of years. So the intent is there, but the delivery is not, and that's kind of where we're at. So it's all the new expensive homes are getting that stuff, and you're not seeing it where you want to see it. As far as new stuff coming down the pipeline, you're probably gonna have you will have natural gas bans in the next 10 years. That's coming. So that is gonna have just increased electrical bills, because I mean that power consumption has to come from somewhere. So it's gonna come from pure electrification.
Yeah, I agree with what Jason was saying. The costs, it's been a challenge to meet some of the goals that have been mandated. Our state has some of the most restrictive energy codes in the entire nation. It started 30 years ago as a means of conservation, actually. But for instance, building code wise, construction wise, you can build a home out of 2x4 construction. But in our state, because of our energy codes and the requirements for insulation, almost all homes need to be built out of 2x6 construction just to be able to accommodate the amount of insulation that's required by our state code. Even though structurally a house will stand very easily with 2x4s, we have to build them out of 2x6 just to accommodate that extra thickness and layers of insulation. And so it can be a challenge for the builders economically. I mean, because we've got a lot of balances to make. There's a lot of different groups. We want affordable housing, but we also want that housing to be sustainable. We want it. It's a real fine balance in our community to meet all the goals that we have. So working on our own local comp plan, shooting for balance, I think is important. I mean, as I think Carl had mentioned, the last council took all of this out of our comp plan. Unfortunately, we're bringing it back in, but finding a balance that represents all the groups so that everyone can have a voice, I think is also an important aspect of the that we include in our goals.
Wonderful, thank you all. Councilmember Henderson.
Hi, I just had a couple of points. I'd like to talk about a longer term sustainability committee, board, whatever we want to call it, supported by a new city position, so that what we do here doesn't sit on the shelf. So I think we council members may be talking about that at some point. The next thing I wanted to bring up, though, is in great respect to city staff time. You and Jeff and Carl and Brie and the rest, and Paul, the rest of the folks, you have a lot on your plates. We understand that. I appreciate you asking, hey, send this to us, show us this. I think we have to keep a couple things in mind. Hopefully there'll be a person, I don't know, maybe a clearinghouse person that we can send things to, so we don't splat it out because of OPMA issues, because this is a board. I think we all fall under the OPMA regulations. So I'm hoping that our little board here will set up somebody, maybe it's going to be you or Cindy, to say, if we've got a good idea, route it through you or Cindy or somebody, and then you can distribute that out to the rest of us. I just want to make sure that staff time is not doesn't increase any more than it always is going to be, because we are putting a lot on your plate. When Councilmember Wook and I and the rest put this on there, we knew this was going to be new work, and you've got daily routine stuff that you have to do every day in the city. So we want to be respectful of your time. We want this group to be efficient and good, but we clearly need some way to route stuff through.
Did you want to talk about OPMA, Carl?
Oh, go ahead. If you saw the email there, Roxy, go ahead.
Oh, no, I haven't been looking at my email.
So thank you, Councilmember Henderson, and appreciate the acknowledgement of staff time, of course. And of course, we are happy to spend as much time as we need to on this to get this thing done and get it across the finish line. And I'm excited to see where this goes in the long run. I did want to note, so as far as OPMA goes, as far as this committee goes, we do not need to adhere to OPMA, as this is it's technically the name of this committee is the Climate Change Comprehensive Plan Amendment Committee. So it's not really the Climate Action Committee is sort of a yet to be formed committee. That might be something that comes from City Council. But this committee is really focused on this comp plan amendment for the city and is formed by staff and therefore not subject to OPMA. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, thank you very much. That helps immensely.
Yeah, and then as far as the kind of the collector, that would be me. Anything related to these meetings, any information regarding, how we move forward with the comprehensive plan amendment, you can send that to me. Hopefully you all have your my email. If you don't, it's on the final slide. But yeah, you don't need to be emailing the whole group or anything. You can just send it to me, and I will be sending out the webpage once it's up and running, and that will also serve as like a collector for information and updates. Okay, we are at 11:37. Does anyone have any other comments about what is important to them within their role or organization, or anything that they've heard from the public or their customers regarding your services or policies around climate change?
Well, I guess relatively recent, but those of us that campaigned to be elected to the city council, we had the honor of speaking with a lot more people than any of us would normally ever do. I know the one big topic that seemed to resonate for a lot of people was, as I mentioned it before, protection of trees in our forest here. Almost everybody brought that up. Probably the second biggest topic is traffic, and I've been reading a lot about traffic and transportation policy and how things have been planned. So we're so auto-centric that our planning codes and everything tends to drive more traffic. So those are areas that I know the public are interested in that relate directly to climate change. A lot of people may not really make that link yet between excess auto trips and how we plan our cities, where we put housing over here and we put services over here, which forces you to drive. But I think eventually that'll start sinking into a whole lot of people. So yeah, traffic and urban forest or forest period is clearly issues that people hold very, very dearly right now.
Yeah.
Councilmember Henderson, if I could, I would like to sort of echo those thoughts. I think that should be a huge part of this conversation, and definitely from my perspective. And I would say that there's a group that I hadn't thought of when we first started pulling this group together, but I might reach out and engage them. But there's Pierce County Health has a group called the Pierce County Healthy Planning Interest Group that meets sort of quarterly throughout the year. And they talk a lot about what you're describing exactly, Councilmember Henderson, about how we basically healthy community design, which is, there's a lot of planning tenets around that, of course. But I think that is definitely something that we should consider in these policies. Again, while weighing all of the barriers against that, making sure that we can actually realize those goals, and we're not just putting sort of pie in the sky policies together. But I really do appreciate what you said there. And I'm planning to do a little more research around that. And I think I will reach out to that interest group as well. And Councilmember Wook, I'm also, yeah, I am, you know, I do meet with the Growth Management Coordinating Committee on a monthly basis. And we are talking a lot about the interconnectedness of all of our cities here in Pierce County, as well as, you know, Pierce County policies, and trying to align ourselves better, I think, is what we really need to do. And, you know, it just seems like we all kind of get so busy jurisdictionally that we forget how we're all, you know, how one city's decisions impact another city's decisions, and the counties overall. So we are having those discussions, and we did have some discussion recently with the county about SEPA and how we're applying SEPA and making sure that we're applying that consistently across the jurisdictions. And then finally, I know that Katrina's been working on trying to get some kind of an interlocal agreement going so that we have more consistent development between the county and the city. So, you know, a lot of those things are happening in the background, and I know all of us have a lot of these things happening in the background. I know Barbara Ann's got a group that is meeting to talk a lot about flooding, you know, in different areas. I think we have flood talking about cities coming up, and flooding in cities. Jeff's been a part of those conversations. So, you know, we've all got all these sort of things happening, and I think this is an awesome opportunity for us to sort of wrap our arms around all those things and maybe bring them to bear. So again, I'll echo what Roxy said, that, you know, just if you guys can start sending that stuff to us, we can start getting that repository going and start sharing that amongst all the members. And I think that will really help form this conversation. So I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Carl. Seems like we may have kind of come to a lull. I feel like we've been on this meeting for a while, and I really appreciate everyone sharing. So if there's no objections, I think it's okay if we adjourn a little early, but I also don't want to cut anyone off. Councilmember Henderson?
Roxy, is there anything you'd like us to do in preparation for the next meeting? Are you going to be sending out something that I understand you want us to give some ideas and thoughts, but anything now that we could be doing?
No, homework will be for the subsequent sessions. Nothing, just if you want to do your own independent research and send me examples, I'm happy to receive those and kind of put those towards the thinking about this comp plan amendment. So yeah, on the screen, that's my email. I'm working from home, so the mobile number is best for me in the meantime. But yeah, please feel free to follow up with any other questions. And then I think I haven't been looking at the flurry of emails that have been going around, but I think we're going to be switching up the links and how the links are sent out. Carl, did you want to say anything about that, or just let people know to look out for that?
Well, yeah, look out for it for sure. But just so when we first set this up, we set it up as just sort of an internal meeting. We later decided to turn it into a webinar, so allowing public essentially then to view our meetings of this body. So the way that will work then is that there will be sort of a public link that goes out as part of the Outlook invite. And that link will get you here, but there will be a follow-up link for all of us who are panelists on this webinar. So keep an eye open for that secondary link that will usually come the week of the meeting, and that gets you directly into this meeting as a panelist. You can still get there through the calendar invite, but you'll just have to be brought over. So sorry about the confusion on that this morning. We will send out an email that sort of explains all this as well and makes it more clear for everyone so that we don't run into this conundrum at the beginning of the next meeting. But just keep an eye out for those additional emails. They would come from, the panelist links would come from either Michelle Thomas or Cindy Andrews who are our planning technicians here, who are sort of managing this on the back end. So we'll get it ironed out. Kylea, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. I was just curious how community members were able to view the meeting today. Was that because I don't think it was the original link that was sent out, and just wondering if I had a mentee from a high school that was supposed to come in and observe this meeting today because she's shadowing me this week, and I know the link that I shared in the original calendar hold did not work for her to be able to join just as a listener. So I was wondering if when you send out information about the next meeting, if you can also send us the information for like how the public can join to listen in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kylea. Yeah, we're working on that. I know we did get the link out, and I know there were some problems with it, and I think we re-noticed that link. But we will get on top of that. So I appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
And then we were recording today, and it will be available on the website once that's up and running.
Good point.
Thank you.
Barbara Ann?
Yeah, that was just my question, is if you would send out a link to where it will be on the website when it gets ready.
Yes, you'll all be updated. Don't worry about that. This all kind of moved pretty fast. I am sick with COVID, so I appreciate all of your patience. All right, so with that, thank you all for participating. I want to give a big round of thanks to Kylea for taking notes. Thank you so much. I know that is important labor. Yeah, so please just feel free to email me any questions. And with that, we'll adjourn. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Roxy. Thanks, everybody, for attending.
Thank you.
See you next time.